That's just absolutely insane what's going on there. And Zach Wade just sent out a tweet like just before we went on, and so I commented back to him and go, "Hey, it's the bipolar polar, Zach."
Again, right? That's the issue. It just keeps coming back. This Siberian
from
heatwave.
Alaska to Scandinavia is cooler than usual. So right across from Alaska to Scandinavia is cooler than usual. But on the Eurasian side, especially centered over Siberia, it's like, up to 10 degrees C warmer.
That's amazing. And
That's
you said it the other
18 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's insane.
It's just amazing. Of course, we've discussed this before, but the implications, what it does for the permafrost, the thawing of the permafrost, and more, like methane and other greenhouse gases being released into the atmosphere. So so instead of the high latitude regions being a carbon sink, they're now becoming a major carbon source.
Yeah, once that starts happening, we're just like the nature is becoming its own industry, is what you just said. Yeah, it's amazing. They don't need us anymore. We have unlocked Pandora's box.
Well, let's go back to, I was talking about that article earlier where these scientists were saying we could hit 1,000 ppms of CO2 by the end of this, by 2100. Okay, so you've got this situation in Siberia. You're going to have massive thawing out of permafrost. Okay, that's going to add CO2, methane, what have you, but that's going to contribute to the increase in CO2. More CO2, more greenhouse gases to trap more heat. You increase the temperature. You're trapping more CO2. The oceans are warming up, and guess what? The oceans gas solubility decreases with increase in temperature. So at some point, the oceans will now outgas the CO2 that they've been absorbing, throwing it back into the atmosphere, and hence further increasing the concentration. So you're going to create all these positive feedback loops. So their assessment is pretty much spot on. That let's put it, I don't know if it's spot on, but it's not unreasonable what they're saying, because you start looking at all the feedbacks that happen.
Right, it's the positive feedback loops. They have been unlocked, and they are becoming their own producers of CO2, creating more warmth. So the positive feedback loop is definitely happening. And in the article, it says these freak temperatures in Siberia have been linked to wildfires, a huge oil spill, and a plague of tree-eating moths. So things are happening with this heat wave that keeps persisting this year.
Well, the fires, they use oxygen, but then when they burn down the trees, guess what's released?
CO2.
Yep.
And yeah. Okay.
And when the moths eat the trees and the trees die, guess what's released?
Oh my God, CO2. We're in trouble, Jim. There's no other way to say it. Because everything is creating CO2 and they don't even need us anymore. We have created the conditions, but now those conditions are acting on their own now. Positive feedback loops, things are accelerating the cycle. Right, I know the link between Australia, the bushfires, it was actually even worse because, like you just said, the wildfires created the CO2, more CO2. So it's not just people having the events, these events are making the planet even warmer.
That's a good point. That's the other thing that people forget has happened in this wonderful year of ours, was that at the beginning of, in January, Australia was burning up.
Oh my God, I know. 1 billion animals died at least. I mean, 1 billion.
Right. Yeah.
Who knows? The koalas were sad. It's creating its own CO2. And that was an article I saw a while back, that those bushfires, which are supposedly going to continue to keep happening year after year, will create their own CO2, just like you said, in Siberia. So it's happening globally. It's not a regional climate issue anymore. It's everywhere. You can't escape.
Is it? Yeah, you start putting things like, well, it's happening in this region and in this region. and in this region, and in this region, it's almost starting to get into that synchronous aspect that these researchers discussed.
Right.
And it's just like, holy shit.
Oh my God, I know. It's terrible. I wanted to say one more thing, because you mentioned this a while back. You said that the thawing permafrost was going to disrupt the oil infrastructure in the Arctic. Do you remember that? That's exactly what's been going on with that
Well,
oil
more
spill.
more than the oil infrastructure, just the infrastructure of communities in the high latitude, because we build everything up on top of the ground with the assumption that the ground will remain frozen and therefore, you know, steady.
Well, that oil spill or diesel fuel spill was blamed on the climate change issue, um, because of the thawing permafrost disrupted the infrastructure. So it's amazing. And they also blamed it on infrastructure itself, not being prepared for the climate change issue, but it's that cycle. It's amazing. I wanted to say that, not that you predicted, but you basically predicted, Jim. I'll give you that. No, it's serious, because this is the
I'll check
domino
the
effect.
bottom of my shoes. And see, I'll check my shoes, see what I stepped in. But anyway, but I mean,
Are you
it's
a
a
wizard?
situation.
Yeah. So are you a
It's
wizard, Jim? Okay, I'm joking.
let me get my pointy Gandalf hat
Oh
on. Here
my
we go.
God. Here we go.
But this is actually a serious problem in northern
Right.
communities, because the roads, the houses, the buildings, everything is built up on the ground. The ground starts thawing and slumping and stuff like that, and everything's going to come tumbling down. The building's going to sink into the ground. They're going to twist. The roads are going to do all sorts of funky things. I mean, it's actually a major threat to northern Arctic communities,
Oh
and
wow.
people don't know that there's quite a few Arctic communities across the boreal
Exactly. And that's where we
latitude.
get a lot of resources too. Well,
Alaska, Yukon, Northwest Territories, Nunavut, into Scandinavia, Russia. I mean, yeah, it's just a lot of many Arctic communities.